Of our message from last Sunday, which is about unscrambling eggs. Now we go back for a recap. Jacob scrambled his eggs when he basically stole the blessing that his father had for his brother. The inheritance, which he bought for basically some soup, Esau didn't have a problem with that. But the blessing from the father who favored him, and told me he had a special blessing from his soul for him, for Esau, to have his brother steal that really got under his skin. He said, I'm going to wait. Dad's old. He's going to die, and I'm going to kill my brother. Mama said, you better get out of town. So he heads out. And 20 years later, and his mama says, oh, yeah, when things calm down, I'll call you back. Of course, 20 years later, Mama hadn't called back. And God says, time to go home. This is interesting because, you know, when we do scramble our eggs like that, God will always bring us back to it. Always. Not 99.99%. This isn't a commercial. This is 100% of the time. He will bring us back to our scrambled eggs. Because we need to work out our salvation in that respect. We need to work out the evil that was in us to bring us to that place. And we need to make it right to the extent that we can make it right. We can't make it right, but God will put us in a situation where He can make it right for us. So it's 20 years later. God tells him he's got to go home. So he's going home. And we're just recapping here from Genesis chapter 32. Messengers returned to Jacob. When he sent his messengers to say, go tell my brother I'm coming. So he wants to get some feedback. He wants to get a sense of where his brother is at. And the messengers returned to Jacob, verse 6, saying, we came to thy brother Esau, and also he cometh to meet thee, and 400 men with him. Of course, verse 7, then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Why? Because he expects the worst. He remembered what he did with his brother. He remembered the last thing his brother said. I'm going to kill you. Not so easy to forget. See, he hasn't worked through. His mind is not regenerated. You see, and that's really what this whole process is about. It's about God working a regeneration in our thinking. That's why He brings us back to our scrambled eggs. It's not about rubbing our nose in the dirt that we did. It's about changing our thinking.
Yes.
And so, how does He do it? He gets it right in our face. And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into two bands, and said, if Esau come to the one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. So he is planning with the expectation that the worst is going to happen here. Is there any problem with that? Is there a problem with that? Yeah, there's a big problem with that. There's no expectation from God here. God said to go back. God's not telling him to go back to get wiped out. So clearly, he's not really connected with God here. He's just connected with his own fears. But God brings us face to face with our own fears. Verse 9, and Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me, God, you said, return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. So he said, God, you told me it was going to go all right. So if you really believe that, why are you doing all this backfilling? But anyway. I am not worthy of the least of all thy mercies and of all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant. Good attitude there. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I'm become two bands. Now he also right attitude here. He says, deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau. For I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother with the children. And this is right. Okay, first of all, he establishes the fact that God has blessed him. He establishes the fact that he's scared in this situation. This is all good. Verse 12, and thou saidst, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. Also good. He's repeating what God said. Okay, but the problem is he stops there. Verse 13. And he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau's brother. 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milch camels with their colts, 40 kine and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 foals. Okay, but what part of God's direction had to do with this? And it's nothing. This is going back to his old ways. Unregenerate thinking. And he delivered them into the hand of his servants, every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put a space between drove and drove. And he commanded the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother meeteth thee, and asketh thee, saying, whose art thou, and whither goest thou, and whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, they be thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau, and behold, also he is behind us. You know, my lord Esau. It's like he's putting himself underneath his brother. Verse 19, and so commanded he the second and the third, and all that followed the drove, saying, on this manner shall ye speak unto Esau when you find him. So see, this has nothing to do with his prayer. So his head's in one place, but his heart's in another place. He goes to God, says, you know what, you've been good to me, and you know, I'm scared of this situation, and help me. And then he up and goes and does his own thing. Does that seem familiar? It should, because we've all done it. We've all done it. Verse 20, and say ye moreover, behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease him for the present that goeth before me. I'm going to buy him off. Maybe I can buy my life with this. God's got nothing to do with this whole process. I will appease him with the present that goeth before me, and afterward I will see his face. Peradventure he will accept of me. So went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. So this is completely unresolved. On the one side, he's asking God for help, and then on the other side, he says, well, maybe I can bribe him. Well, of course, naturally going with all of this is he's looking for a cosigner. He wants God to cosign his sneaky dealings like he always did. It's like God never cosigns. God's just not a cosigner. He doesn't cosign our craziness. So what happens? On the one side, he's talking a good game. On the other side, with his heart, he's doing something totally different and disconnected. This is actually the great reproach of Christians everywhere. I don't know one person who calls themselves Christian that can't talk a good game. It's like they know it all, they can say it, they can repeat it, it's like it's a writing great, but then when you watch their life, it's like, wait a minute, that's where the problem always comes in. That's where the world has a reproach against us, because it's like what we say and what we do, they just don't match up. This is Jacob's problem, this is our problem. Trying to unscramble our eggs. But now we see God's solution, which comes out of left field, sort of. And he rose up that night, Jacob that is, and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook and sent over that he had. So everything's gone over. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled the man with him until the breaking of the day. So it's like God separated him from all his stuff. Everything that was important to him. From his wives, from his kids, from his flocks, his herds, from everything that meant anything to him, God separated him. Because God wanted to get his attention. And it's dark. When that time comes for us, it's always dark. That is, it doesn't matter if it's daylight, but spiritually, it's a dark time. We just really can't see anything. And God encounters him face to face. This is Jesus Christ. It says, the Bible is very clear, no man has seen the Father and lived. This is Jesus Christ he's wrestling with. Jacob was left alone, as we all are, when we have to face our scrambled eggs. When the time comes that we have to face what we did that we really shouldn't have done, it's dark. And we're alone. Because there's nobody to bail us out. And we face God. And they wrestled the man with him until the breaking of the day. So what's the deal? Well, there's a wrestling with God. We always wrestle with God.